فنحن كتير سعيدين اليوم إنه معنا دكتورة هلا يلي بدها تخبرنا بالضبط شو اللي عم بيصير
الكلمة النفس التربوي يعني
شو عم بيصير بمرحلة الطفل ليتلقى رسالة اختصاصية العلم النفس التربوي. شكرا كثير لكم.
شكرا جزيلا مساحة. أنا يونانية واسمي يعني إذا جدة كانت خيار الآباءات أباجي. لما تقول جي أباجي إلا يدك is Turkish. أنا والآن نحن جدي والأبي كذلك كان لاجئين من تركيا لليونان. وأنا ولدت بيونان في تسالونيكي وسعيدة جدا للخبير هذا المؤتمر وأشكر كثير المنظمات كل المنظمات هنا التي يشتغلون في المستقبل الأطفال السوريين. أفضل إذا أتكلم بالإنجليزي لأن أرتكب الغلط وأبدو شكرا أحيانا أجد الكلمات الصحيحة. اشتغلت في البنك الدولي وارتقيت في البنك الدولي. اشتغلت مع 47 سنة من 27 سنة وزرت كثيرا البلدان العربية من اليمن والمغرب وأحيانا المصر والآن اشتغل في قضايا في البلدان الخليج مع اليونسكو وكانت من USAID. ولأحد الأسباب تعلمت العربية الفصحى فقط. أحضر إذا أتكلم بالعربي في مترجمان جيد هنا الذي يترجمون أفضل مني كل الكلمات. شكرا. A lot of discussions have been going on about what to do with the refugees and how to build skills. But they reflect very much what has been going on in the world when people who are very wealthy and want to do a good job say, how do we help the poor? World Bank. How do we help the refugees? How do we help anybody? And the people who do invariably do not know how memory operates. Schools all over the world, colleges of education do not teach this material. So people try to do education the way it seems right to somebody who's a middle class person, who has, educated 6 children and has a very good, practical sense of what to do. But people need to, so often, decisions are in the hands of people who have never taught children, don't understand how long it takes to deliver something, and don't understand also what the brain will do with the information. So we see, for example, an accomplished speaker, and the accomplished speaker speaks like this and says, oh, the most important thing is communication. Yeah, but to get to the communication, there's a whole lot of basic other skills that developed over 15 years. And people don't, they don't do that, so they say, we won't teach these things to the children. These things are traditional, rote learning, that stuff, we want innovative. And you can't, unfortunately. And what I will discuss today is why you cannot, what the research tells us what you can and cannot and can do. And I will do that with a lot of some videos from the yesterday's visit and some other schools. Because so often we get things like, how many believe students should not memorize? How many of you believe that students should not memorize things? You do, okay. Who else believes that students should not memorize? Okay, we'll explain why. How about the 21st century now is going to make different schooling, different pedagogies? How many people believe that the 21st century brings different pedagogies and it'll be very different from now on. Okay? Well, consider it should, but then you have the same DNA as in the 17th century, in the 10th century. So what you have, you're dealing with the DNA, whatever you throw at it, it's the same DNA. And that is a big problem. Or, the big question, like the most important thing about the refugees, everyone knows, so psychosocial well-being, everyone is interested in that. Is this the most important thing for the refugees? Yes, no? Yeah, the question at the end is, are they the most psychosocially good thing you can give them is actual education that will enable them to get somewhere. Because if the refugees are in schools where they feel very well, they're loved, everyone takes care of them, feeds them, does the help, saha, and they don't learn what they need, are they going to benefit at the end? And that's what I want you to think about in this talk, because what I saw had me worried, frankly. And it's not just here, it's not just Syrian, it's not just refugees, all over the world. We see this idea of not teaching what the brain needs. So the presentation will get through this. Basics of memory so that you will understand what should be taught and why, quite quickly. And important research factors about Arabic reading, about math, Arabic math, there is a component of that. The fact that teachers also have working memory and cognitive load, so what should the teachers do and learn, by the way? And what should you do in order to teach the Syrian students meet international standards? This is what will be. Memory principles in 15 minutes or less. There are 10 minutes, if we can say. Many of these come from cognitive psychology. By the way, you hear a lot of neuroscience. Good, but neuroscience explains or validates cognitive psychology, which is the older memory research. It doesn't yet tell us how to teach anybody. It just says whatever they found out in 1973 is correct. Two kinds of memory is what we have. Implicit memory, explicit memory. And implicit memory, explicit memory is conscious recall of rules, facts, events in your life. You remember when you were a child that you visited a certain place. That is episodic memory. I hope everyone found it. And when you say, I know that the capital of Lebanon is Beirut, that is semantic memory. It is conscious. Schools teach this semantic memory a lot. This is what you get most easily out of books, exams, things like that. It is quite important to be able to consciously get that. But then most of our memory really is kind of like the explicit memory is the tip of the iceberg. Most of this memory is implicit memory. That is habits, procedures that we learn, knowledge that we heard yesterday, something we heard yesterday and suddenly it's makes us remember something, called in English priming. This is the stuff that is not conscious. And we cannot make judgments about it. For example, how do you hold your pencil when you write? Assume you still write with a pencil. Can you describe to me how you hold your pencil? What do you have to do? Yeah, but you see, you have to look at it. You don't anymore consciously say, how do I hold my pencil? It has become an automatic process. It's very important because you no longer remember it. It makes you therefore be able to do other things while simultaneously holding your pencil. The most important things is what happens when we pour knowledge information into these two kinds of memory. The neurons basically in our brain take this stuff and change. They build connections. They build connections in specific ways. The neurons want small pieces, because they make small changes at a time. And they get bigger pieces, bigger changes, gradually, patrician. And in order to do this, the biology requires time, days. So we learn something today, and better not be very much. We need to review in a few days, and then again in a few months, and then it becomes permanent. If we don't review, it will be forgotten. In order to make these skills, that is, automatized pieces, we need, of anything else, we need practice. And not just practice, we also need feedback. Someone needs to tell us if it's right or wrong. Very often the reality will tell us, but we need feedback. This is what very often the poor don't get, feedback. And nowadays the schools don't give enough practice. So a number of the things that people could do, previous generation could do easily, this generation does not. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. Because what the brain needs is time on task, feedback, practice. And you will get bored with that, or people think the children get bored with that. And that becomes a big problem. When we practice, actually, the improvement obeys mathematical laws. So there are formulas that predict how much practice you need for specific skills to get faster and better in them automatically, so that you write without thinking. And these mathematical laws, in fact, can help ministries create budgets. How long does it take for the Syrian students? They come here, they go to Makkah, and they say Hamda, but we teach in French. So suddenly we have to teach them in French, for grade 4. How many hours of instruction and practice does it take? Well, maybe it takes 3,000 hours, and it's got to be done in 1 year. It's probably not going to work very well. And curricula is what they are, but the reality of the brain is what it is. We don't have data for this, because again, educators don't know this material, unfortunately. But we can have data if we want to. So where does the knowledge sit? Interestingly, our brain is set up in networks. So let's say this is one item of information. It doesn't exactly work that way, but schematics help. And it's linked to some other items of information. So you bring in something and it sits over there, and then it becomes linked. And you see these two pieces don't get linked. You teach something and these two pieces get linked. Practice also links more of these items, to where you ask information in one part of the system or in one way, or by orally, and you're able to answer with information that you learned by reading a book, which was not oral. It's very important that this be done. And schools have the job of doing this of connecting these pieces. Yes, please.
This is how the brain synthesis.
Yeah, our brain works like this. You don't see it. Yes, exactly. And I will tell you the biggest issue, of course, this. And this is, by the way, for both implicit and explicit memory. It's like that. You put the two together and you practice and you come up with these composite skills to where you hear something and you're able to transcribe it on the computer. You don't think any longer. Your fingers have done this enough times to where this particular procedure has been taken out of your working memory. Big deal about this is working memory, that I will get in a minute. But because these are networks, in a way, the teachers and the schools are in the construction business. That is, you take each of these bricks and you put them to do this.
Wondering, when you watch a baby explore, isn't that all critical thinking? Aren't they doing trial and error and testing when they're crawling and exploring with all of their senses? That's not considered.
That's not critical. No, exploration, which all organisms do, is one thing. And by the way, trial and error has to do with this implicit memory. You do something by doing it, and you say, did the floor give in? Did I fall inside the pool? Oh, okay, so we're safe. say that, Hillary Clinton was running a brothel. I mean, I'm not joking, they came up with that. That's going to be right. That's critical thinking. Or people think that the earth stays put and the sun revolves around it, or that, the earth stays put and that's the end, Jesus is coming, taking us away. May not be right. That's critical thinking. It's a higher level, like where you challenge specific assumptions. There's clear definitions of that gig. But again, our business is to build that, and then we hope by the time we get to that high, that someone will say, this doesn't sound right, and act differently. Shut up and don't say anything in front of the dictator. Well, I don't like the dictator, what can I do? That kind of stuff. The big obstacle, the elephant in the room, is what is called working memory. Long-term memory, explicit memory, has this barrier. Our brain holds a temporary store in whatever we learn over here, right now. I'm using some numbers that belong to the 50s, but they're cleanest numbers for educators. For about 12 seconds, it holds about 7 pieces of information. There's newer research that fuzzies this up, but this works. So, if you take too much time, I'm trying to think, to dial a telephone number, you forget it. If too much information is given to you, the working memory overflows, you forget it. What was it he was saying? Mind yourself thinking about this. Everything that the schools teach in terms of explicit memory in particular has to go through this. So in a way, you can think of memory, of long-term memory, as the biggest bottle in the world. The bottle here. I mean, this bottle, for example. But this bottle inside has this very narrow bottleneck. That bottleneck will only permit 7 items for 12 seconds. You do more, you can't do it. Huge, so it's kind of like this. You've got to run very fast in order to put an item in, and then it'll sit in those networks that I showed you. If you read too slowly or calculate too slowly, by the end of the sentence, you forget the beginning. Or you're trying to solve a problem, and the child goes like this. They don't know multiplication tables, they don't know mental math. They cannot solve the problem. They run out of working memory. Huge issue that unfortunately we're not aware of. Our working memory is unconscious. And educational faculties don't teach it or don't explain what it does. Many of you have gone to school where you can recite to me what it is, you just don't know what it does. Big problem. We really are prisoners of our memory. In order to free ourselves from memory for a few seconds, like a door of a prison, opening every few seconds, you've got to run fastest out. You don't have to be out of the prison for a few minutes. The implication, very important and strange implication, we have to execute very fast, in milliseconds. We have to read in milliseconds, understand speech, understand the language in milliseconds. And the milliseconds build up. If you can do it in a few milliseconds, you can answer tests. If it takes too long, then your working memory works, it wipes out, you've got to read again, and it gets tiresome. People get tired very quickly when they have to do these things again and again. So the goal of early grades, but also of later grades at all levels, is whatever you need as basic skills for that. That is what you need for civil engineering, you need to do differential equations or whatever, in lightning speed time, that's got to be done, in order to have more time to think about critical stuff. That is, we need to process the basic stuff instantly, power up, in order to have time to think. If the process takes up most of your working memory, you don't have to. Huge. Yeah, but in order to do this, you've got to learn to operate. You've got to learn to operate the computer, check if it is correct or not. These are the big issues. is in it. You understand? Okay, so we can actually do a test. How good is your working memory? And short-term memory, by the way, means the same thing, but it means short-term memory in English means you repeat something the way you heard it. Working memory means knowledge rushes up from long-term memory, gets mixed up, and it enables us to make decisions. Again, we have this narrow deadline to make decisions. So, I will give you a test. I will tell you numbers every second, and you repeat them after I tell you, you repeat them back. 6, 9, 8. No, repeat them at the end. Start all over again. 2, 1, 5, 0, 8, 6, 7. Okay, good enough. When you have them like this, set items in sequence. Now, I will repeat you numbers and you know them backwards. 7 numbers and okay. 1, 8. No, don't repeat. Repeat at the end. Okay. I erase and start all over again with a sequence of numbers. 6, 7, 9, 2, 0, 1, 8. You see how limited we are? It is incredible. When you don't have any context, if it's in this case, then you see how limited our working memory is. Everything needs to then become very speeded up, needs to be connected together in order to pass into working memory and come up to what we usually do. Because we usually don't realize there's discontinuity in our memory. Kind of the last piece of whatever was wiped out comes if you remove it into the next one, into the next one, into the next one. But when you have no context, then you see the difference. So, what does the brain do? The brain has been built up, this whole mechanism has been built up to get around working memory in certain cases. And it has to take small pieces, as we said, the neurons don't change fast. You gotta take small pieces, and connect them. Connect them with practice, and then you have these learning curves tell you how much practice you need. Very quickly, I'm going to do that. You connect small pieces one by one with practice, and in the beginning it's slow, and then it gets faster. And this does, it moves out of your consciousness and into the unconscious, to where it moves out of the working memory. So you can sit, and again, type. I'm a touch typist. I'll listen to all discussions and go and write all kind of stuff. To calculate, you go to a store and they say these are 5 for $1 versus 6 for $1.50. Now, which ratio do we want to buy and which ones of these we're going to buy? We have to make these instant decisions. There is no time to make a calculator. And you've got to have good enough math to make these instant decisions. And the math is hugely important. And all of these pieces need to be built by each or piece by piece by piece. This is how chunking works. The brain kind of does like this. You take one letter, or 1 or 2 numbers, and you add the third one. You can take 2 of these, and you can add the third, 4th one. You can take again 5 of these, and you can get a 6th one. You can take 3 little wagons, and that's 2 more. But if you take a whole railroad, the nervous system says, I can't handle this. That's too many changes in the neurons, in the neuronal connections. Someone's got to break this up. This means that math reading needs to be taught through phonics, letter by letter by letter, in every language and script. English is complications because you've got to learn some stuff by heart without analyzing it. That creates a problem for English. But in Arabic, don't teach these holistic methods, we know they're a disaster. And we will see that why. It also, the brain also facilitates in this way analogies. Bali upebo, you get predictable with kaki utebo. And in transparent, in consistent orthographies, like vowel Arabic, they make all the different, this is how this should be taught. Another analogy is the multiplication tables. We don't like the idea, a lot of people here don't like the idea of memorizing. The children had better do this and know how to use it and learn the stuff very fast and learn it, by the way, in analogy, not just loose. Loose does not connect well. Remember those connected networks, they need to be connected in a growth one. A number of times, people recite these in our various languages to where they become rhythmic. The students have no trouble time reading it. For example, Laila could be playing the flute to the tone of how to sing 5 times 1 and 5 times 2 and 5 times 3 and 5 times 4. You get it down, then you implement, then you apply it. Then you have this mental math to where you can do it. And we need to do that for everything. Fluency, effortlessness need to be the speed, the goal of training. That is, practice something enough to where it leaves your working memory. You don't have to deal with it consciously. Then your working memory is left for higher purpose goals. This is a big deal. So what do we do about Arabic and math given this? And then I'm going to tell you what we saw in the camps yesterday, and I'll show you videos of that and say, then what do we do with it? There's a number of factors that adversely influence Arabic. Arabic has a difficult situation. The only, and I know many languages by the way, the only script that has complications kind of like Arabic is the Khmer script of Cambodia. That also that we understand has difficulty, that I see that has difficulties. Now, one big difficulty that comes up front, our brain wants certain separations in the beginning. And it's all been measured, and I won't get into that. If you're interested, I'll tell you tons of it. But the old textbooks, back when everyone was poor and there was no practice, somehow the teachers could figure out what to do, how much separation to put. So here are Ottoman textbooks from the 19th century. And you can actually learn to read the Arabic script in Turkish. But you see, we get used to this. And then we're able to deal with these tiny, tiny letters as they're produced in Arabic. But because the middle class gets used to it, and those educated curriculum developers do it, look at today's Lebanese textbook that I photographed. Much smaller letters. And we see that everywhere in the world. Middle class creates educated letters that are made up basically for expert configured readers, not for small children. I'll show you the alternative in the next few times. Harakat. Harakat are necessary. This is what makes the language, of course, so explicit, but they crowd visually the place, which is why harakat get removed. One reason why harakat get removed. There is a big problem, to have them or not to have them. It's up to one point, like grade 3 and 4, 5, 6 maybe. Okay, help, and then they start slowing down reading. When do you remove? How many do you remove? Interesting, the research is going on in Israel. Reading Arabic has this problem. Arabic has multi-part letters. Many multi-part letters, more than any other language script that I know. And I'm not sure there's many more others. These, like the shin really has 4 parts, and the qaf really has 3 parts, etc. And the nun has really 2 parts. You don't get many languages that have the scripts that have these things. Most of the scripts are one shape. Like English, the Latin script really has one shape. There's very little to this. That kind of is judged by the way the visual system creates the Gestalt patterns. So you actually have to learn to read Arabic by breaking up with the Gestalt patterns. That slows down reading. Adults read a few milliseconds more slowly. Now, do you, educated adults, you don't see the difference, it doesn't matter. To a fourth grader, taking pins or pearls, it matters a lot. A few more milliseconds and then you run out of working memory and you cannot answer the question. So that is important to hold. And actually the way Dr. Mufti was talking about it, it is one of the explanations. Then there's the issue of language. And the issue of reading, by the way, I will discuss. The issue of reading is this also. Very fast and going through big issues. Automaticity in reading, to read effortlessly. The way you see this, you can't help but read. Or in Arabic, means that with practice, we get to recognize words as if they were faces. Really weird, not pictures, faces. Face recognition, partly done in this part of the brain actually, means that you recognize a face sideways and at the front, with or without a beard, with short hair and long hair. This is what makes it possible to recognize calligraphy, different fonts. It's the face recognition mode, and a number of other stuff that I won't get into. We need the students to get enough practice, letter by letter by letter, in order to turn on the face recognition mode, let's say, here in the Arab world for sure, by the end of grade 1. If we are in, Chad or Senegal or somewhere else, it's be fine by the end of grade 2. But you guys here have no excuse. It should be done by the end of grade 1, to where you read again effortlessly. So many of you have watched your children where they go, and then they go, and that's what we want. A standard that is very often doubted and maligned and this and that, but is a good standard, is 45 words per minute for the Arab world. 45 to 60 words per minute in general, but the Arabic puts together some words. So how do the students sound? To give you a little bit of an idea. Here is Indian fourth graders. Now this is actually the Syrians. This is the Indian fourth graders. Letter by letter. And then. What you heard in the beginning was the child before, then they gave 6 weeks of remediation, then you hear this face recognition mode being turned on. We need that face recognition mode turned on. By the way, adults cannot do it. We all become dyslexic at age 15, 18 or 19. It's terrible. Now let's look at the Syria. The way I see elsewhere, you go to Yemen, you go to Morocco, and the kids cannot utter anything. Jordan. So this is not a major issue. Somehow either the children became, educated sufficiently to turn on the face recognition mode. Now this is really, really low level face recognition. It's like an airplane. They managed to land and they're flying at the level. There we go. And they're flying at thank you. They're flying, right above these buildings. Rather than into, let's say, the stratosphere, as it should be. But it's better than what we see elsewhere. So we need to move from there to the next stage, which is discussion. And we can. Thank you. And forgive me. I've got to get back to where it was. And deal with comprehension. And I will quickly tell you, about comprehension. Because, by the way, the Arab world is doing terribly in this respect. They keep doing these whole language, whole word. And of course, it's so enticing because if you're a Luva Harakat, you have these nice shapes. Yeah, but only after you become very automatic readers. Children can and do recognize the stuff. You know, ustra, or the way you do the step, you have these stacked letters that no one's teaching. And yeah, the kids will see the shape and they'll say Muhammad, but they won't be able to break it up. What we want them is to be able to know piece by piece, because then you can rearrange the pieces. You do this, you cannot, the children will do it. You cannot rearrange the letters. And that, by the way, is from Egypt. We get problems. Or they keep these long railroads on day one of Tunisia. And I say, you know, were these children, are they supposed to remember the letters from a previous life, or what? You know, oh, they're supposed to have learned them in kindergarten. Come on. A bunch of kids don't go to kindergarten, and they don't go to kindergarten regularly. Then they remove the harakat without any introduction. You have these small, low-level letters talking about dinosaurat in a Yemeni third-grade book. There's nobody who's going to understand this. And it's a huge issue. So, and because then the question is, of course, we are teaching the students basic reading so that they can extract information from it. Well, that's when we start getting into specific trouble for Arabic, which has also to do with something that Dr. Mufti has been talking about. I mean, this terrible performance in pearls and pins. I'm afraid the English specialists have misled the Arab world very cruelly. You have all of this nice stuff out of English because the English grammar is so simple. It doesn't conjugate. You know, as students, we had to learn do, did, done, go, went, gone, speak, spoke, spoken. Probably every one of you, the Arabs had to do this. That's all. What does Arabic have? Conjugations in masculine, feminine, dual. في الماضي في المضارع في المستقبل في الأمر والأسرة خلات الفعل. You've got to learn them piece by piece. Look at what an Arabic student should be learning in order to do standard Arabic in school. What people have misled them about is, let's teach them the word implicitly. That's very casual word, use of the word implicit memory, as you see, is something specific. The students need either a lot of sampling from each one of these many pieces, or to learn them systematically. Let's go back and think, I showed you analogies. So children can very efficiently say, أنا أتكلم، تتكلم، ويتكلم، نحن نتكلم، أنتم تتكلمون، هم يتكلمون. Okay, تتكلم، استقبل، etc. You can get them to conjugate and then apply, because we're very good at taking in patterns. Now, to any one of you who's been blaming rote memory, we've got to tadbik. Immediately we have to apply it. You cannot stop at saying conjugations. Conjugate this, you're out of, you're done. No, you're just beginning. But you have to conjugate, because we take advantage of the analogy and the symmetry. And we need the symmetry. I, you, he, we, you, they, or any way you do this. The brain takes the symmetry situation very seriously. So this stuff needs to be taught in order to do standard Arabic. And we don't, because as we know, no one speaks standard Arabic. And yet, every one of the books is only written in that. And I'm not blaming and I'm not discussing this is how some of these things have to be done. But that means that the students, if they say they learned, the book says, katabtu. But in another book, in another page, they'll say, yaktibuna. They cannot, the child cannot predict one from the other. It's not like go, and then there will be go. Which is the big mistake that people have learned from the Americans. Or the Brits, or the whatever. So, and this is not only the verbs are not only one big thing. You have negative sentences, lest waladan. Who is doing lestu, lesna? You've got to learn this stuff. That's not the way you also do negatives. And then you have the pronouns of the mind. And you have to write together. I mean, it's not, it's not. And you've got to learn this stuff when? In grade 1. Otherwise you cannot understand the damn thing about the text. Unlike students from other countries, like you go to them, you cannot understand. Students do not. So they get set back for 2 and 3 years. That's what we see by grade 4. That the students in grade 4 of the best schools of Qatar, for example, in Arabic medium, cannot compete with, average students of, average schools of, let's say, Belgium or Albania. And I use Albania a lot as an example. You go to the mountains of Albania, you read them a 4th grade text, and they can tell you what it says. They may not know all the words. We want the same thing here. In all of the Arab world, you go to grade 1, I need to be able at the end of grade 1 to read a 4th grade text to the students, and then to know all of these changes and be able to interpret fast, precisely, which is what the working memory demands, is fast, instant execution. How do we do it? I'm trying now, but the point is, these are the big issues. This is why students, they don't like it, they don't read, therefore they don't get better. They get less and less sampling. They only read for information. They won't read for fun because it's not fun. So there are things we can do, and this is not just for the Syrians. It's for everybody basically. And I will show you for a minute a book that we developed, and we will be testing starting 2 weeks from now in Ras Al Khaimah, Filimarat, to where we take very spaced letters. I mean, anybody who wants them, we are able to give this book, but it needs to be finalized. And we start by one letter, making them big, and get them to discriminate, let's say. This is still the wrong version, but anyway, because we don't need the who, shouldn't be doing who. Za, zi, and spend a lot of time doing this in class. The boys in particular benefit from this. There's a huge difference for some reason. In these visual factors, boys do less well. So we get to do this thing with boys, we expect very decent performance. And spend the entire time in a class reading. That is decoding until you start getting more meaningful text, and then the letters, we start putting the connected letters together. I started with the separate letters, like the Tariq al-Baghdadiyya, if any one of you is, the older traditional stuff, and to get into the connected letters. And then, quick as we can, we put meaningful text. This actually needs to be finalized. And here is grammar being taught to grade 1 students, Shifawiyan. Here is a very small thing. We can see that the first graders can indeed learn to conjugate orally while they're learning to read in the Imarat. Ras Al Khaimah. This is, I thought that we would need like each one of the, the Awzan, the Halat al-Fay, like half a year. No, 3 weeks we can do this whole thing, all of the 10 forms. In Madri, Mudaria, Al-Amar, in masculine, feminine, Mudakar, Mu'annath, without using mustalahat. The big deal is like Al-Yom, Ems, Ghada, Ana, Anta, with the gestures. There's a fair amount of research on gestures. With the hopes that this will get the students to get over, to do this and be able to perform to do this in grade 1. And use it and enter it into implicit memory, whose rules we decently understand. Remember, I told you implicit memory stuff that's procedures that are not conscious. So, and by the way, if you want to prepare the students to remove harakat, it's useful to learn like 500 useful words, common words. There's actually, this is a Lebanese list of words that needs to be done in whatever, 3rd, 4th grades. So we know what to do. There is important reading practice for automaticity. You can actually have the students spending 15, 20 minutes. In the beginning, don't worry about meaning. We want them to build up the speed and the automaticity so that they can instantly put something into working memory. And then, of course, they need to understand it once they put something into working memory, which is what we've been trying to do in actually teaching them language. So, other things being equal, they'll understand more fluently when they, fast more when they read fluently. And it's very important to do that. And we want the teacher to go to every student and provide feedback. And this is what your teachers here of the Jusoor should be doing. Go from teacher to student while the other students are engaged reading something. And we can give you that book if you like it. Math. I'm going to go much faster. Math obeys the same laws for working memory. You need to do math instantly, rapidly, fauran. It's got to be done in order to be able to perform in life. And you actually need to also know procedures in order to do from small numbers, because we can do small numbers, by the way, intuitively. We're born with math, but we're born with math of small numbers. And we're also born understanding a line of numbers. We've got to develop these things, however, and that's what schools are for. There's a fair amount of new research. Math obeys a triple code. You see the number 3, as written in Arabic or in Latin. You hear thalatha, or salasa. And then you need to get the sense of Trinity. 3 equals, is more than 2 and less than 4, and it's 3 times this, to where you see a 3-ness. That needs to be developed, and it fails in children. Children are very good at writing numbers, they're very good at reciting the stuff, they're not as good in developing this number line, and number sense sometimes. And a lot of neuroscience has gone into discussing, discovering what this has done. Beats, nudges. So this is the triple code. We've got to develop, the 2 parts are fairly easy, the 3rd one is harder. Within the triple code, the brain has 2 kinds of math. The exact math, 3 times 2 is always 6, but then there's the approximate math. Like between here and the glass, and I'm asking you seriously, between here and the glass wall, how many steps do you think there are?
25.
Let's say it's 30. Okay, start counting. Don't want to spend the time. So let's say it's only 20. Okay, so we give you feedback. Now we say, take another one of these. How many chairs do you think there are in this room? And the better people are the ones who are more exact in these. For instance, you will be much better probably. Otherwise you wouldn't be an architect, a civil engineer, no way. You've got to, there's no doubt that you're extremely good in approximate math, you just haven't thought about it. The better students, the better approximators are the ones who will perform better in math. This capacity needs to be developed in kindergarten, in grade 3, for your children. The girls in particular, put them to do these estimations. Any estimations, invent them and then do it again. How many, beans are there in a can? How many fasulia? Okay, you dump them, you count them. Now how many more? You give feedback where the students get better and better and better at estimating. They need to get a sense of this visual and actual numbers line. Many schools have square pieces in the yard, to where if you, in a sense, they get a number. So from 2 to 4, okay, how many paces will it be until I get to 9? Those are addition and subtraction. The students need to develop that. People who are not educated get kind of this scrounged logarithmic numbers line. We are very good with 1 to 10 and 20, and then as the numbers get further away, we are fuzzier and fuzzier. So a number of books give this kind of exercise. Exercises such as, here is a line from 0 to 100, point the position of 18. Here is a line from 0 to 1,000, point the approximate position of 230, etc. Here is a line from 0 to 100, and I'm putting to this point, what number do you think it corresponds to? These are the exercises that the kindergarten should be doing. Yesterday I walked in as you were showing some things like trying to guess the number of your friend's heads or something. Do it this way. Get them to do estimations. Not just guess some exact. Get them to guess. Come up and think a whole lot about estimations. Approximations, then give them feedback to get to where they get more and more precise. Their estimations get closer to reality. Because then you say, okay, I want to build that house. How much does it need to cost more or less back on the envelope? You need to be relatively precise. Most important, performance in grade 1 predicts performance in grade 7. And the better students in this stuff will do much better in grade 7. And there are tests that are interesting. How else do you develop numbers like? You need that right away, because for the same reasons of working memory. If you count on your fingers, or you have to take out a calculator assuming you have one, and you turn it off, working memory is doing right there. So you have to be able to do this stuff very quickly. You, your children, and of course, they are refugees. There are some games. If you guys are connecting to the mathematical games, snakes and ladders, how many of you know this? This will help. There's good research on the number slide and some of this stuff. Number race. There's a number of things. Then there is Singapore math. Everyone loves Singapore math. What does it do? It connects the triple code. So here you have a problem. Here you have the numbers themselves, and here you have how many squares, and the Singapore math works very nicely. In many ways, here's a Brazilian graphic of this, where you see the numbers, and then you see them where you can try to connect the triple code that way. Gestures and illustrations. The children need to be able to answer you instantly 3 times 4. But they also need to understand, and this is how we can make these things easier. That is, both memorize and explain. You get them to understand why 3 times 4 is 12. But for the reasons of working memory, we've got to memorize. For the reasons of mathematical thinking, we've got to be able to do this. So, the standards in many countries are the same. And strangely, mathematics actually can skip languages almost. I mean, the children should be able to be doing the take French books and actually solving the questions. Now, how well done were the children doing yesterday? Not very well. So, I'm taking a French book and asking them to solve 3rd grade. So I'm asking for addition, subtraction, multiplications, no results, none. We could not do it. And here is where she needs the multiplication tables and she doesn't know them. She is maybe 11 years old, she doesn't know the multiplication table. She cannot define what that working number to bring out clearly without anything those pieces. Math benchmarks, someone had asked that. Well, there are benchmarks, and it's interesting that if you wanted to set up studies from the United States, because nobody thinks about them, students should be doing something like 10 to 20 single-digit operations per minute in order to perform reasonably, again, given working memory limitations. We can measure that stuff. Right now, the Syrian students rate is about 0. So we understand these things. You can do them. We're very clear about it. Of course, ICT was discussed. Of course, new software, if it's practical. That's why our software does not really often go down to the level to these low levels. Starting kindergarten, what gets me very upset, and I saw here what I see everywhere in the world, when the students can't do the job, the teachers put them to do the drawing. So instead of math, we did these two things. It's ridiculous. What I saw yesterday got me worried, very much worried. The students cannot, their grades simply cannot take in infinite amounts of information. Whether highly educated and very exceptional, maybe. Most average and low-income students take small amounts, with a lot of repetition, and in order to build these cognitive networks that I showed you, they need extra time. They also need time in class to be devoted to actual teaching. And forgive me, I think I mentioned and showed this. I know that's was very badly used. One reason that students don't know is that time needs to be used well. You need to keep students all the time busy, learning, actually implementing stuff, doing exercises, practicing reading. And this is not what happens. Very often we see the situation where one student is on the blackboard, very often the better students, and everyone just sits. Very bad use of time. Many of these innovative and interesting activities go on time, which is a major reason why in the Gulf, the richest schools start learning enough reading. They do so many creative things, they use up all the time. It's very important. We have this interplay. One of the students, you have to go on the students to be able to, do stuff and everything, when we need them to get automatic and these things that will determine their future. They can't go anywhere without math. They can't go anywhere without speaking ability, language ability, etc. So you see, for example, yesterday, all of these students are sitting when one student goes to the blackboard. They're all sitting. So this expensive school setup that we all did with so much effort is wasting something like 5% of the time. In my days at the World Bank, we did big studies. I started to do big studies with instructional design. Then we were seeing like an 85% wastage. And the teachers are doing the best they can, but we all have to think how to do this. This particular situation, the teacher would be asking the students while the other students are practicing something. Then you can take it away. While someone else sits and watches. We saw that a lot. So, the children basically need remediation to catch up. I don't know what they're going to do. One I saw predicts like 3 or 4 years behind the grade. And yes, now the level curriculum expect fast progress. Every curriculum in the world expects fast progress. It's set up for the middle class. But that doesn't excuse everybody. You either do this or you say we're really doing non-formal education and we're really doing school. We need to modernize with basic items they like early on. The best way to do it is do this very important, both reading, math, Arabic, standard Arabic, and grade 1. And use all of the research that we have. Because we're stuck with this working memory business. We have to implement as fast as possible. We have to execute in milliseconds. And we've got to be able to understand that is the whole point, is these basic skills. I mean, people love music. We saw this beautiful music stuff. It's all wonderful. The psychosocial stuff is wonderful, but the best way to be psychosocially supported is to give the children the school to children the skills that will enable them to do something better. So we've got to focus on refugee education, let's focus on these instructional details. Thank you.
Thank you.